Welcome, my friends, to the Money D and A podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Dale.
And I am Andy.
Today, we want to help you ditch your debt.
Let's do it.
Debt. What is this thing called debt? How did we get ourselves in this situation in the first place? If you are, whether you're making $25,000 a year or you could be making $250,000 a year, debt is something that could erode your net worth, your mental and physical health in some
Mhm.
ways. It can just erode your overall wealth building, if not your
Mhm.
your wealth overall.
Right.
And we want to help you at least talk about how you can ditch your debt.
Yep.
And how
Yep.
do we get what's going on here? Paint me a picture.
Oh, it's
And
not pretty. Are you sure you want to see the picture? It's kind of ugly.
well, I think most of us are already in the we're
Do
aware
we
of the
know?
ugliness to some
We know
degree,
how
but
ugly it
sometimes
is.
it
All
helps
right.
to
Well,
just
we'll see
just
if I can
paint a clearer picture. Yeah.
shock us into here. So, this is literally just a snapshot. I'm sure if we did some more digging, we could find some more aspects and the epidemic that is debt. So, just a couple stats right here, just to kind of set the stage for what it is we're going to be talking about. Okay, 77% of Americans report feeling anxious about their financial future. I don't think that is a stretch. I think that in the midst of tariffs and inflation and job insecurity and that kind of stuff, I could see that getting north of 80% very, very easily. Okay. So I don't think anybody's going to debate that fact. Okay. What do we do about it? That's what this episode's for. This one just breaks my heart. And there's again, you could probably find stats that maybe say, oh, well, it's communication and this kind of stuff. But again, I'm sure people that are dealing with divorce lawyers and this kind of stuff, they understand that the importance of or the prevalence of financial stress and that kind of stuff, just maybe coming in with different one's a spender, one's a saver. There's so many different aspects that lead to financial stress and that leading to divorces. And then millions are unable to save for emergencies, retirement. So I actually shared with Dale right before we jumped on here. I just saw a stat the other day said, and this is easy to remember. So it's 40% of Americans could not write a $400 check. 40% of Americans could not write a $400 check for a medical emergency. That's
Seriously,
sad and crazy and disheartening.
you're saying right now, if I asked you the average, well, 40%, if I asked 10 Americans,
Hmm.
could you write a check right now for an emergency medical bill because your kid's teeth got knocked out or your teeth got
Yep.
knocked out,
Right.
and you've got to, write a check right now, then 4 out of 10 people would say no, but I can maybe hopefully give you a credit card and
Right.
pay it off in the long
Yep.
term or something. So would have to go into debt in order to
Exactly.
cover that, whatever that expense is.
Right.
That's
And
painful.
it is painful. And I again, if you've watched any of our episodes before, you know the heart of where Dale and I are coming from. This is not meant to be a shame thing if you are fall into that, right? I mean, so 40% of the people watching this may fall into that, okay? Again, no shame. It's just like, okay, let's again, you cannot tame what you cannot name. Let us identify this is the issue, this is the problem. How can we get past that? That's what this episode's for. So one more stat here before we dive in, Dale. Again, just average. I'm sure that we could find different numbers right here. So just average household debt. This is going to include, your college kids, your other things like that. So that's why this number is not the same as this. But those that have mortgage, on average, about $250,000 in mortgage debt, student loan debt. I found this so fascinating. There are a bunch of what would it be? Baby boomers, right? The boomer generation is still carrying student loan debt, and it's because they are funding their grandkids. They're funding their grandkids' education because they love them, because they want to help out, but they are going in debt at a very late stage in their life to help out. So that number, I think, is very accurate and it spans across generations. Auto loan debt, credit card debt. I've seen some that are actually closer to 9,000. So much debt. We are swimming in it, drowning in it, maybe some could say. So that is the issue. What other? I don't know. Anything else we need to say before we dive into some positive? Now that we've punched people in the gut.
I'm really glad you clarified for me in terms of, people in the boomers and retirees all of a sudden are still
Hmm.
paying off student loans.
Right.
I heard that, I've heard that before, but I never made the connection that it could be for their grandkids that they're
Right.
paying for, or for their maybe their children, who knows
Yep.
in this day and age. But I was thinking the entire time, man, what a nuts, student loan payment system you've
Hmm.
got down in the US that people
Hmm.
in their retirement age are still paying off student loans.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if there were still people paying off their own student loans from when they
Oh,
were,
absolutely.
in college. But I thought that that was sort of like the standard norm. But now that you mentioned that, that
Yeah.
is really clear. Um,
Yeah.
one thing I would like to point out is it's not necessarily like the super poor or people uh, who are in poverty that are necessarily swimming in debt. You could be middle class and still be dealing with like the mortgages and all that,
Mhm.
car loans.
Right.
You could be dealing with debt. You could be in an uber rich category and still
Hmm.
be relying on debt, right?
Hmm.
We have to remember that people who are in like one of the I don't know if you can call it a strategy, but perhaps it's a strategy. One of the strategy that some uber wealthy people use is by leveraging, their assets and the quality of
Hmm.
the assets to take loans out. So we
Hmm.
take loans out on their assets. They don't necessarily
Right.
take an income from
Hmm.
owning their company.
Right.
But what they do is they will say, well, I have so many shares in this company, and this company is worth so much money. So will you go then lend me some money? They'll
Right.
offset some of their interests and payments and all that. But
Hmm.
they'll essentially do that and then take out billions of dollars on
Hmm.
some kind of company like
Right.
company X.
Mm.
Wink, wink, wait, no, and then they will then I don't know. I mean,
Yeah. No, I got you.
yeah, they'll take out loans on a Model Y
Sure.
and then
Yep.
go out and pay
And get
for a
X.
company X or something.
I love it.
And yeah, it's not that you have to, it can impact. We're talking about debt is impacting people on all social strata.
Correct.
So the question really
Hmm.
is is debt really that bad? Is there any
Right.
such thing as good debt? What are the different kinds of debt out there, Andy?
Correct.
And yeah, let's start with that. What are the
Yep.
different kinds of debt out there?
Very good. So just as a real quick recap here, we're not going to go through all of them, but we are building back our birthday cake model here. We start with a foundation of cash flow. Our bills are paid. Everything's taken care of. Last episode, we talked about protection. If you've not seen that one, definitely start with that one. You could probably do these out of order, but it does make sense as far as um, the process of our thought to kind of build it from the top or from the from the top. That's what people do, right? From the bottom up. And then in the future, we will talk about an emergency fund. And then finally,
The
investments,
role of
right? So
investments,
we will get there. I promise. There's people that are just, I'm sure, itching for us to get to the point where we're talking about investments. We're almost there. But back to Dale's question, what are the different types of debt? Is there such thing as a good debt? This is a very big question. So here we go. We got 9 minutes here to kind of dive into this one. So is any debt good? That's an interesting way to phrase that because again, is credit card get debt good? I would say 90% of the time, no, right? I mean, that's just not a good debt to get in. If you are going into debt to get an asset like a house, then that's potentially yes. So we could wax and wane back and forth, right? Is any debt good? Potentially yes, probably not. I think that's the short answer of that one, but we need to unpack that a little bit. So help me out here, Dale. Where are
Yeah,
we
I
at,
mean
right? Because it could be
we
lots of
we
different ways to do it.
there's some people out there, some financial professionals out there, or investors and business people who clearly classify things as there's good debt and then you have bad debt. Bad debt is just money that's given to other people for the sake of you're paying for time, you're paying for convenience, you're giving money for something else extra, but there's no other asset or value
Mhm.
that's coming from borrowing that money or using other
Right,
people's money. And that, let's be clear, debt is just using other people's money, right? You're
right.
leveraging something that you might have, or you're leveraging your good name and your good credit to be able to use somebody else's money, if not indefinitely for a short period of time or just momentarily. That's what the debt system is really
Mhm.
about. And
Right.
um, like Andy, like you pointed out, people will say if you are just giving away money for the sake of giving away money, then that's not necessarily a good debt. But
Hmm.
if you are getting some kind of an asset from it, or if you're using that debt, if you're using other people's money and leveraging that to be able to
Mm.
build up your own asset, your own equity somehow, then you would call that a they would call that a good debt, a better debt than just straight on paying money just for the sake of paying money. Um, I think the long and the short of it, this is a bit of an opinion, I guess, but the long and the short of it for me is that at the end of the day, all debt is not great debt. It's better
Hmm.
to build your money and as much as possible to be building your worth,
Right.
your money, your value without necessarily relying or leveraging other people's money. But that being
Hmm.
said, there is tremendous possibility and there's some great things that can come out of consciously and with good awareness
Hmm.
leveraging other people's money, leveraging debt, leveraging your credit
Hmm.
to be able to grow your wealth or
Right.
using it as in your overall strategy.
Yeah.
So is it all bad? No. Reckless and unchecked, is it bad? Absolutely. It
Right.
runs us amok. It can ruin families, like we say.
Yep.
It's lots of things that are unspoken that we're putting under a very sometimes not very strong bridge that you're going to be
Hmm.
ultimately standing on. And should
Right.
we be tackling it
Right.
120%?
Right. A couple things that came up while you were talking about that. I think, and this is going to be a common theme as we talk about this and all other things, is mindset. Like, what is the mindset? Is this a must have? Is this I love the idea of leverage. Like, is this a leveraged debt that is going to turn around to give us something in return, or is this just something that we use and it's just something we want, right? Used want. Cars are kind of a that's a tricky one. I think that's kind of right on that line of like, okay, it is something that I need. And again, there's needs and wants and this kind of stuff, but 90% of the time, right, cars are going to depreciate over time. So is that something that we can leverage to turn around and then gain something in the return or at the end? Probably not. So one is just mindset is like, is it a need or is it a want? Um, the other aspect, where was it? It just escaped me. Oh shoot. Bail me out
You're
here,
talking
Dale.
about
It'll come back
mindset.
to me in a second. What's that?
Mindset. Like what is the
Yes.
mindset to have? I
Hmm.
think you're right, Andy. I'm buying you a little bit of time, but you're absolutely right. I think the common narrative or the quick sort of sell that we're often hearing is, hey, you can buy this and you don't have to pay anything up front. You can
Hmm.
just buy it on credit. You can pay it in installments or something for the four
Right.
months. You could use this credit card and rack up points so that you can eventually
Mm.
get a cheaper flight somewhere down the line or get $3 off your grocery bill or you know whatever the corresponding credit point system is that comes with a lot of these
Mhm.
credit cards. And it really confuses that mindset like you're talking about. It makes things a little bit less clear for us when we're getting into debt because we start ignoring the debt implications and the costs, the hidden
Mm.
costs that we're taking on when we're going into debt, especially when it comes to buying things on credit or credit cards. And I think you're absolutely right, Andy. Having that clear mindset of, okay, I'm going into debt. I'm doing this for, but I need to know exactly what I'm buying. Is it an asset? Am I just spending a hundred or $1,000 more to get a better fill in the blank? Because
Mhm.
it's making me feel better and I'm paying somebody
Right.
else to make me feel better about my purchase. Sometimes I think we need to have a very sobering, every day, we need to have more
Hmm.
sobering conversations, not just
Right.
sometimes. We
Right.
always need to have more sober conversations with ourselves about what we're paying for and
Hmm.
not judge ourselves. Sometimes, you know, we're doing it because we want to feel better about it, or there are other reasons in there, and that's okay. But call a spade, call
Right.
a heart, and let's be clear
Mhm.
about that mindset that we're getting into.
Right, right. Thank you for the
Yeah.
time. I appreciate it. It did come back to me. So, you said something about credit card, points and this kind of stuff. I heard something the other day, and I don't know why, because I love, getting my bonus points and this and that. I've got Apple Cash, this kind of stuff. It's all great. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's how you're using your debt, right? Which what we're talking about here. But someone told me, or someone I listened to the other day said that no one is getting wealthy off of your bonus points or your flight miles or whatever the case is. No one is getting wealthy off that. Is it a nice perk? Sure, but to I don't know, just deify this idea of like, oh well, I've got this point system and I'm just earning so much money on this. How much are you losing? How much are you paying in interest to get this $20 in Apple Cash? So that's something again, just a sobering reality of like let's call a spade a spade. These are not necessarily bad things, but don't lose money in interest because you're trying to build up your points. That's just throwing that out there. So if you can't use credit in credit cards specifically in a very uh, refined and thoughtful manner, um, don't use them, right? It's better to go on a cash system and not get into debt further, but trying to chase these point systems. So this is the one that came back to me, and I might have mentioned this here, but I think it's worth repeating if I haven't. I've gone on a couple different journeys with coaching, and a while ago I was a health coach, right? Helping people to get out of not out of debt, helping people to lose weight
Mm,
and get in a healthier state. And when I shifted over and talking about finances now, I was like, oh, that's a perfect correlation, right? Debt is to weight gain, right? I mean, that makes perfect sense, but it's not. But it's not. It takes time to gain unhealthy weight. You can get into debt that fast, signing a
mm.
paper, signing a mortgage, signing that car loan that you want but don't really need. It is dangerous, guys. It is so dangerous. Debt is, I think, a probably potentially a more harmful and an easier way to slip into very unhealthy habits than even overeating and weight gain and this kind of stuff. So I'm not trying to compare or say one is, well, maybe I am saying one is worse than the other, but just wanted to throw that out there that debt is almost more risky and more scary just because it can happen so much faster than the
Yeah.
eventual or the gradual weight gain.
Yeah, I think you're touching on something without getting too meta or too deep into like the spiritual aspects of it. You really are like weight gain. You don't gain, 100 pounds or 10 times your existing weight overnight or even in the course of a year. You'd
Hmm.
have to be doing something really ridiculous to be adding on that kind of physical mass. But debt in the debt system, you are signing contracts that are instantly tying you to
Hmm.
somebody else's net worth, to somebody else's cash or money
Right.
and you are instantaneously tying yourself into the liability, right?
Hmm.
You can grow. I mean, in the accounting equation, we have assets and liabilities, and with debts and borrowing money, you are instantly taking on a liability. You are saying, I want to use your money. So you are liable for that money that you are using or borrowing, but you are right away, you know, you're instantly liable for that. If you want to buy a
Hmm.
house and you're instantly liable for the full value of the house
Right.
and you're using somebody else's money, so you're paying somebody else's paying the bank
Hmm.
for that use of it, and you're tied to that. You're instantly tying
Hmm.
yourself overnight
Yep.
to 10 times, sometimes way more than
Yeah.
your weight. I mean,
Yeah.
takes me back to that expression, the person is worth their weight in salt, but we're not talking about just
Right.
salt here. We're not just talking about taking bags of salt that you've accumulated, after years in the field. You're bringing that salt home. You're saying, I'm going to use your salt and I'm going to take
Hmm.
way more than my weight in salt
Right.
from your hands.
Yeah.
Somebody's kind of going to come calling, right?
Yep.
Anyways,
I agree. I
Andy,
agree.
I think I know we want to get to the second topic, and
Hmm.
maybe this is somewhat related. So I'll start the timer on this.
Okay, here we go.
That comment that you made before, about before the weight gain and the debt. Um, there's hidden costs to those
Mm.
point systems and stuff. I
Yeah.
think something that I realized coming out of the restaurant business for a long time, most people don't know this. I'm not trying to guilt trip you into using your credit card, by the way. I'm not saying this as a guilt trip, but people don't realize that it's not the credit card companies who were paying for those points for you.
Mm. Mm.
Oftentimes, your points were being charged to the merchants that
Mm.
you were using the credit cards with. So, for example, let's say you have an air miles, a rewards points, for air for flight points or something,
Mm.
and you have a nice card from there, and you get a great credit card that not only are there low fees, but charge they'll give you 10 times more air points if you
Hmm.
went with this tier of credit card, okay? Which is fantastic. But what happens is when I use that at the restaurant, when I use that for my grocery shopping, when I use it to buy something from a mom and pop shop down the street, what most people don't realize is that the card processing companies and the credit card companies will charge the costs of those air mile points
Mhm.
on the merchant.
Really?
So they're charging the grocery store, they were charging the gas stations, they're charging mom and pop shop, the extra money. It'll be like, okay, well, this no, normally credit cards, we're only charging you a 1% credit processing fee or something
Right.
for the retailer. But in this particular card, because it's a premium
Mhm.
card, then we have to charge you
Mhm.
7% or 10%
Right. Right.
because it's an extra thing. And so that's why a
Uh,
lot of if you go to the stores and a lot of the smaller places will be like, I'm really sorry, we don't take any, premium cards. We
right.
only take Visa or only take MasterCard or we only take and they'll have like sort of stipulations on what they want to do
Mhm.
because they can't afford to be paying all those extra added
Right.
charges on them. And most of us, we're not thinking a dime. We're only thinking about like, oh, this is a great sell.
Right.
I'm gonna get an
Right.
extra 1 air mile for using it here or
Hmm.
something, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
not to make you feel guilty, but it is, as you say, it's
Right.
a good layer of consciousness awareness that we hope
Hmm.
that you have
Right.
as you're getting yourself into the credit system. And we
Right.
can't avoid it. Let's be
Right.
honest.
Yeah.
Especially here in Canada, 1/3 of our um of our economy is dependent on the banking and credit institutions, right? Like they
Mhm.
they are they are huge parts of our economy here. They're unavoidable. Like it's hard
Right.
for us to get by. I don't know anybody, now that I think about it, I don't know if you can make purchases sometimes, kind of like what you're saying. Nobody's carrying a checkbook around anymore,
Yeah. Right.
and
Right.
and people aren't putting $400 in their checking account. So they're
Nope.
probably, I'm guessing that you gave is probably going to be true for us Canadians as
Right.
well. It's unavoidable, right? So it's
Right.
really about like how conscious are we and how aware are we? And is as the question in here,
Hmm.
um,
So why
how do
prioritize?
we
Right. Yeah.
how do we prioritize? How do we make sure that we're not perpetually putting ourselves into
Right.
and then this cycle of debt, of growing debt? The
Right.
longer you sit on that time for the debt, and the more that you just keep making minimum payments,
Hmm.
then that debt, the interest that you're owing on that debt is just going to keep growing and it's going to turn into a snowball, right? It's a avalanche
Hmm.
or avalanche effect.
Right.
So we really have to make sure that we're not overutilizing this wonderful credit and debt that we
Mhm.
have, and we're not making too many other people rich besides ourselves, right?
Right. Isn't it? Oh, is it Albert Einstein? I forget the exact quote, right? The understanding interest, right? I mean, it's the seventh wonder, or the eighth wonder of the world, and those that understand it earn from it, and those that don't are destined to pay it, something to that effect, right? So yeah, I mean, why prioritize getting out of debt is that you're and the one and again, if you've heard a couple of our episodes before, you probably think that I'm against or have something out against people that put their couches on credit. But for whatever reason, that's the most ridiculous one, right? We've gone from two generations to not putting anything on credit to now we can't buy our couch on credit or whatever. Um, so the why prioritize is it's this, right? That $1,000 couch, if we're putting it on credit and we're taking the long route, which the credit cards and the banks really want us to do, because there are so many people, to Dale's point, there's no shortage of people that are using credit and giving people their money, their minimum payments, even if it's minimum, all the time, because they know each week or each month, rather, they are gaining a little bit in interest, gaining a little bit in interest, right? Um, so why prioritize is that $1,000 couch guaranteed is going to cost you way more than the 10, 12%, whatever that is. It's going to be $1,500, maybe 2,000 if we're taking this long route. So why prioritize is we are overpaying for everything we put on credit if we are not aware of it and paying it off as quickly as possible. So why prioritize on it? You're losing your hard-earned money giving that to the banks, giving that to the credit cards because they're going to win if we play by their game. I think that's maybe that's the aha moment for me in this moment right now. If we play the credit
Yeah,
card and the bank and the lender's game, they will win every single time. They just
yeah.
will.
And it's not like they're pulling a fast one on anything. That's just as you
Right.
say, with the way the compound interest works.
Right.
Um, if you're not conscious of time, then the way with the power of compounding, the longer that money is owed over a longer period of time, then the more the amount will grow, right? That's how compound interest works. And we should do another episode, Andy, where we talk about compounding interest and trying to see the relationship with the numbers and with time.
Hmm.
But essentially, the financial institutions and people who make money, um, they know that money compounds and grows with time, so they want to keep you in the game for as long as
Hmm.
possible, right? And that's how they're making money. And it's just how
Hmm.
the system's set up. We're
Right.
not trying to, poo-poo on the system itself. It is what it is.
Hmm.
So one of the strategies to prioritize or to help us get out of debt faster is to play a shorter game, play the shortest game
Hmm.
that you possibly play,
Yep. Yep.
and decrease your timelines. If you can't necessarily make massive lump payments immediately, then at least make sure that you're doing your best to minimize the time that you're making those payments as much as possible, right?
Yep.
Which means if you don't have a plan for it, then, well, I mean, we'll get into
Hmm.
that strategy
Right.
in a
Right.
second,
Right. Yeah.
but
So,
certainly decrease your time. Yeah, you're
absolutely. So, and I've used this before, and again, I realize everybody watching does not have a mortgage, but that's one that is just the most obvious one. So, again, I have these numbers just off to the side right here. So, a $400,000 loan at 6% for 30 years. Okay. One would think
yeah,
6% plus 400, that's what we're going to end up paying. This is the actual amount of interest, guys, interest. It's called the tip, total interest percentage. That is what the banks are collecting $463,000 on your $400,000 loan. That's 115%. That's nowhere close to 6%. Okay. So
yeah,
again, why prioritize getting out of debt? If you sat down at the mortgage closing table and they disclose this information, how many people would run away run out of the room? I think a lot of people would, right? Because they're thinking, oh, 6%, that's pretty good in today's rate. Hey, I got a great rate. I'm at 3%. Okay, even 3%, we're close to 100%, maybe 90% on the total interest percentage. Again, if you play the lender's game, they're going to win. To Dale's point, you have to decrease that timeline and you have to shorten that. Okay, we're going to talk next about what are ways to do that. There's lots of different strategies. I will say it now and we'll repeat it again. Taking action is the most important aspect. Okay, whether you're doing avalanche, whether you're doing snowball, whether you're doing a financial GPS, wink wink, um, something, take some action, because if you play their game, they are going to just continue to um, invade your checking account and continue to just take away your hard-earned money.
yeah. I think it's good to point out, Andy, that we sort of we hinted we talked about it initially, whether you could be making $3,000 a month, or you could be making $300,000, and you'd still be running into the same problems because
Mhm.
that affects everybody equally. For dollar, when you talk about the interests and the percentages, the interest rates and the percentages aren't going to be significantly different.
Mhm.
What's going to happen is, I mean, they'll just be bigger amounts of principal that you're owing, but
Right,
you're still owing a lot of
right.
money. And what it does is it erodes your overall wealth building potential. You're making $100,000 a year, but you're also paying $80,000 a year, right?
Mhm.
That would be the same thing as if you just made $20,000 a year with no interest payments. So, I mean,
Right,
with no debt obligations.
right.
It's eroding your overall wealth building potential, right?
Correct, correct.
Taxes, you pay too much in taxes. Nothing against the government. You got to
Mm-hmm.
pay your fair share in taxes,
Right,
but you shouldn't be paying too much money in taxes,
right,
because that's going to erode away the money that
right.
you are making. Nothing against the banks. If they've designed the systems to they're making their money, right? And those of you who are investing in the banks, then you're also making money on them making money, so that's all good. But you don't want to necessarily be um, working too much for other people. You want to make sure that you're working for yourself as well. You want to pay
Right.
yourself first, if not equally,
Mhm.
with everybody else, right?
Right. Right.
So $400,000, and then you pay out $463,000, was it, to to
Hmm.
to the bank?
Yep.
Let's see if
Yeah.
we can just maybe
Shorten
increase
that.
our own overall wealth building at the same time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
And I
yeah,
love the work that I do with my clients, because we can actually see what what the future holds. Because I think a lot of times we're focused on now. That, and again, I realize that I rail on this a lot. Banks will sell you on the APR. They sell you on the APR, but they charge you on the tip. Same thing with credit cards. They sell you on the points. They sell you on this. It's very much a smoke and mirror. Like, hey, look over there, and at the same time, they're charging you through the nose, right? So just be aware of
Mm.
that. One other thing. So let's wrap it up with this. What are some strategies to help and to give people hope? We've told all of the bad things about debt and what that's doing to our families.
Yeah. Hopefully
Now,
we
how
spooked
do
you
we?
enough.
What's that?
Yeah. I said, hopefully we spooked you enough now.
Yeah,
How
right.
do we,
Exactly right.
right.
So what are some
Yeah.
strategies and help to get out of that? So,
Well,
Dale, what give me a couple here. There's lots of different ways to help people get out of debt.
well, the first thing to do is to name it. You
Yep.
talk about
Right.
it, write it down, list all of your debts that you're paying out, and have a conversation with yourself, with your spouse, if they're involved,
Mhm.
with a trusted financial professional, just to sit there and figure out, okay, this is what debt we have.
Right.
How are we going to tackle it, and how do we
Mhm.
minimize the overall debt that we're paying?
Mhm.
It's really helpful not just to look at it from a month to month point of view, but look at the overall timeline so you could see for yourself, like Andy was pointing out with, the mortgage payments. This is how much we owe. This is how much this asset is going to grow over time if it's a good debt. This is how much we're going to be paying over time. And I think seeing that on paper, hearing it out loud, being able to viscerally feel that will hopefully maximize the impact and increase the urgency for us, for you, to minimize that debt. Because as great as it is, it's not that great. It's not. You should be making your own money. If you can make $100,000 clean with no debt, can you imagine how quickly
Mhm.
that wealth can accumulate
Right.
versus $100,000 with a $50,000 debt load?
Mhm.
It's a night and day difference. So get out
Right.
as fast as quickly
Right.
as you can. I love what you wrote down, Andy. You might be riffing on what I said, but you should keep a long-term approach when you're talking about it. Um, we're living paycheck to paycheck oftentimes because we're thinking paycheck to paycheck. We're only thinking about our immediate needs, and we're not really placing ourselves, like future placing ourselves nearly enough. We're not thinking about how our dollars now can be invested toward and can bless people in the future, right? That we could be putting money to work right now to be growing for ourselves, for our retirement, or for our children, for their education, or we could be putting money aside right now, to be entrusted to grow and to be able to impact and bless people in 10, 20 years time, or when we pass away, when we're talking about, legacy planning or estate planning or something like this. We're not thinking about the future nearly enough. Same thing with debt. We're not thinking about the costs of these debts and the impact it'll have in three months from now, 3 years from now, 30 years from now. We're not thinking about that nearly enough. And if we did, if we have a clear image of that, then I think sometimes the choices that we're making for ourselves become a lot clearer. Uh, it's easier for us to be less impulse driven and less emotionally driven. Nothing wrong with that, but
Right.
it will be easier for us to make the decisions that we know align closer with our values.
Right. Right. So I had a Bible verse here, and of course now this way. Okay. So the rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is slave to the lender. So this idea that uh I mean, it just is what it is. I mean, we talked about earlier, like signing that mortgage, you are physically becoming like a slave to that lender until such time that you can pay that off. So get out as quickly as possible. There's another one. I think it's also in Proverbs of like as a snare, get out as quickly as possible, right? There are biblical and ancient wisdom truths to what it is that we're talking about here. This is the longer that you stay in debt, the more you're going to pay, and the harder this is going to be to and the more it's robbing your future. Honestly, I love another thing that I do with clients is we break down this debt analysis and looking at how quickly can we pay off your debt, and then the inverse of that. So let's say I'll use my personal story here. So my wife and I are in a brand new, beautiful home. We're about 3 years in, so we should have 27 years on the bank's plan. Using the financial GPS, we have cut that time in half to 15 years, And because we have paid that off faster, it's got a really cool amortization, right? So we've paid off in 15 years. For the remaining 15 years, if we did the full 30, right? If we continue to pay money to ourselves, again, the interest works both ways, right? Compound interest works both ways. So if we can start putting money in and paying ourselves for that last 15 years, guys, it's insane. It is insane. It is over $400,000 at the end of the 30 years that we could have in our investment in our bank account, not just using the bank's plan where we are just barely getting by and scraping and getting to the point where we're finally out of debt 30 years down the road. If we can pay this off faster, then we can start building faster, and it just sets us in a much better spot to where we can do the things that we want to do when we're retired and go, chase grandkids and that kind of stuff. So, get out of debt as quickly as possible. Talk to somebody. So back to some practical ways. Again, financial GPS, please talk to me. I promise that is going to be the fastest way. It's literally the mathematical fastest way to get you out of debt, especially if you have a mortgage or student loans, anything over like $200,000. So that's my primary thing that I implore you to do is talk to us about the financial GPS. However, there are other things, and there are ways to do this that are going to maybe take a little bit longer, but you can do on your own. So they are what? There's the snowball, right? So that's taking the smallest amount on your loan, whatever that is. And then once you've paid that off, you snowball that into the next smallest, and then you snowball that, and that's going to build momentum. And before, two or three loans down the road, debts that you paid off, now you're putting a much larger payment towards your principal. So snowball's another one. And Dale, have you heard of the avalanche? What's the avalanche payment? How
Yeah.
does that system go?
The different techniques, I guess, of paying down, if you have multiple kinds of credit cards or debt obligations, then these are different strategies to be able to tackle paying down your debts. So one way would be to pay off whatever you owe the least amount of money
Mhm. Yep.
and pay that off first, right? Especially if that's your highest interest payment. Oftentimes,
Mhm.
the thing that you owe the least amount of money
Right.
happens to be what you pay the highest interest payments, but it may not. And another strategy might be, well, whatever has the highest interest rates, I want to pay that off first. And you're using the momentum of paying off one credit card or one debt obligation first and fastest, if you can cut that out
Right.
as quickly as possible, because some debts you're on a schedule and it's not as flexible, so you can't,
Right.
pay that off any sooner than you would like, even if you wanted to. But let's say if you take the momentum of that and then you allow that to then you then go and pay off your second highest interest rate or your second biggest payments. And the idea is that it ends up accumulating. The money that you
Right.
you used to pay for that first debt obligation is all freed up. So now you
Right.
can amplify that effect for your second debt obligation, and so on until all your debts are paid off, right?
Right. Right.
Um, it doesn't necessarily have to be either of those, but I think the important thing is you should have a clear-cut
Hmm.
strategy. You should make a
Right.
decision now, have a plan, and then
Hmm.
stick with that plan. You say, I'm going to put this much money to this, I'm going to put this much money to that, I'm going to put this much money to those debt obligations.
Hmm.
List out all your obligations, and then strategize on how you're going to pay off all of those various obligations
Right.
in the shortest amount of time possible and make
Right.
that a priority. Again,
Hmm.
remember, you're just giving money to somebody else and making somebody else rich. Why not make
Hmm.
yourself rich as much as
Right.
possible in
Right.
terms of your financial wealth? And that
Hmm.
means prioritizing lowering your debt obligation. It's about managing debt here overall. We're not saying you should be paying it all off in, by the end of this year, but certainly you need to have a plan and tackle it as best as possible and manage your debt obligations.
Yep.
And try not to get yourself into too much more debt going forward
Right.
after you hear this conversation.
Right. Absolutely. So to recap here, is any debt good? Yes, but most is not, right? Is it an asset? Is it something we're leveraging, or is it just something that we want? And are we paying that off? Are we using it as cash, or are we just racking up that debt? Okay, so if we're racking up debt, that's not a good debt, right? Why prioritize getting out of debt? It is stealing your future. If you are living on credit, if you are living on debt, you are robbing your future self of financial freedom, of time freedom. You may disagree with me, but that is a true statement. Okay, and then what are some strategies to help? Again, there's lots of different ways. Um, and again, I will not give it another shameless plug here, but the idea of talk to somebody that you trust. Okay, talk to somebody you trust. Hopefully, through these last 8 episodes, you've learned that our heart is where we're at and what we're wanting to do here. So talk to somebody that you trust. Find a plan, get into action, commit to it. We were talking before this of just the difference between consistency and intensity, right? Intensity is great, but throwing one lump sum at a massive elephant is good, right? It's going to take a chunk out of it, but the consistent, one bite at a time, over and over again, that's what's going to take you and get you out of debt. So find a plan, stick to a plan, and do that. So reverse engineer here. Here we go. So our Money DNA podcast, you can find us tinyurl.com, money da podcast. Go ahead and scan this one. We do have a YouTube channel that has a bunch of extra content talking about financial GPS, talking about getting out of debt. And we have I have a Empower Wealth Solutions Facebook page where we're sharing good information, talking about some of the same things that Dale and I are talking about, but again, just trying to give strategies and new hope and this kind of stuff. So thank you for sticking on with us for a little bit longer episode. We hope that this was valuable and useful for you. Please share this. We are still a relatively new channel. We would love to get out and get this word out to other folks. So thank you for your time. Dale, any final parting thoughts here?
I think we have our work cut out for us for the next episode. So I think I have a couple of parting thoughts that I've written down, but I'm gonna save them for next
There you
time.
go. You got to tune in next time,
Um,
right?
yeah, I think you're the one parting thought I'm gonna say, Andy, is you've already said it. Is talk about it, have a
Mhm.
plan, and commit to that plan. Commit to
Yep.
whatever commit to yourself
Yes.
and commit to your future self especially and
Mhm.
stick with your plan, whatever that
Right.
is. Okay.
Yep. Very good.
Love you folks. Thank you
Yep.
so
Thanks, guys.
much.
Appreciate it. Talk to you guys later. Bye.